Call to order.
I'm ready.
Very good. Good evening.
Good evening.
Today is February 22, 2022. That's right, it's 2/22/22. Call the University Heights City Council meeting to order. Mrs. Thomas, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Sachs? Here. Mrs. Blankfeld? Here. Mr. Rock?
Here.
Mrs. Wise? Here. Mr. Gould?
Here.
Mr. Cooney?
Here.
Mr. King?
Here. Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first item is the reading and disposal of journal. Is there a motion?
So would that be as amended? There was a typo, but I think both Mr. Cooney and I caught. I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion to approve by Mrs. Weiss, a second by Mrs. Blankfeld. Were there corrections?
A minor typo.
Do we need to list them? Does Mrs. Thomas have the correction?
It was language within one of the ordinances. It was simply, it said, it was supposed to be private.
It's supposed to be private and spelled P-R-O-V-A-T.
Yeah, probate.
Minor typo.
Okay. So is the typo in the minutes or in the ordinance itself?
It's listed in the,
It was listed in the ordinance,
yeah.
which,
I don't know if we can, Mr. McConville, can we correct the ordinance?
I thought, if I'm remembering correctly,
Or is that a piece in this one?
I think the typographical error you're referring to is in one of the ordinances on our
Or this
agenda this
evening?
evening.
Right.
This evening,
Yeah.
minor.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I
I'll
know
second.
that Ms. Thomas had made those corrections at my request. Thank you to both of you for pointing that out. But I don't think that would be in
Okay.
our minutes.
No,
Right.
my error.
It was 2022-12.
Yeah. I'll second Mrs. Weiss's.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the February 7, 2022 minutes by Mrs. Weiss, second by Mrs. Blankfeld. Any further discussion? Mrs. Thomas, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Sachs? Aye. Mrs. Blankfeld?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye. Okay, very good, motion carries. Next item is additions and removals from the agenda and referrals to committee. Is there a motion to remove from the agenda item C?
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion by Mrs. Weiss to remove item C from the agenda. That would be ordinance 2022-12. This is following discussion had at the committee meeting earlier this evening. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Mrs. Sachs. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll?
Mrs. Sachs? Aye. Mrs. Blankfeld?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye. Okay, very good. Item C is now removed from the agenda. Are there any other motions relating to additions and removals from the agenda or referrals to committee?
Mayor, after speaking with the fire chief and police chief regarding items G and H, I understand that those can be referred to committee without affecting either the Lexipol subscription or any pending applications for grant opportunities, and I'd like the opportunity to discuss those in committee. Also, I've discussed with the chiefs the referral of item D to committee, as they have not provided their input in committee session prior to this being brought to council. If any of my council colleagues would like me to make my motion in parts, I'm happy to do that. Otherwise, I'll make a motion as a whole. Would anyone prefer to discuss these individually? Then I'll move to remove and refer to committee items D, G, 1, 2, and H.
Okay, and just for clarification, these would all be going to the safety committee, correct?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, very good. So we have a motion by Mr. Gould to refer items D, G, and H to the safety committee. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Second by Mr. King. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll?
Mrs. Sachs?
Aye.
Mrs. Blankfeld?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Okay, very good. Items D, G, and H are referred, and we will not be bringing up those items during the regular portion of the agenda. Are there any other additions or removals from the agenda or referrals to the committee? If there are none, then we will move on to number 5, comments from the audience. I understand that there were no written comments submitted to the city to read this evening. Is there anybody here this evening who wishes to address the city? If so, please come to the podium, speak into the microphone. Please state your name and address for the record, and you may take up to 5 minutes.
I'm Bert Siebert, 2645 Whitten Road. Mayor, I'm pleased that the city is taking up the problem, not the problem, but taking up recycling. In 1943, our family moved to University Heights. It was in the war, in the middle of the war, and every home in University Heights was issued a burlap bag in which you put your paper. So the paper was collected with the garbage, but in the burlap bag, so we were recycling back then. Of the 14 houses on Whitten, I think myself and another house are the only ones that have blue bags with the rubbish. So I'm in favor of a container being furnished by the city to put our recycles in. I think if we have that a container for every household in the University Heights, we'll probably get the idea. The glass, paper, and plastic go in that for recycling. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Siebert. Is there anybody else who would care to address the city this evening? Seeing none, we will then proceed to reports and communications from the mayor and the taking of action thereon. Tonight, I want to talk in my report about the budget. Since the Finance Committee meeting, I have refrained from public comment until this evening. However, there are proposed cuts from the Council Finance Committee that I want to address on the record, starting with the cut to purchase the recycling carts. When I introduced recycling modernization in the 2022 budget, I received overwhelming support for the change from our residents. According to the 2020 annual report and residential recycling report of the Cuyahoga County Solid Waste District, University Heights recycles just 5% of its solid waste. That's the third worst in the county among suburban cities in this county. Last week, I received the figures for 2021 for our city, and that figure dropped in 2021 to 4%. As a city, we simply do not provide the infrastructure to recycle effectively. We do not provide our service department employees the equipment they need for effective pickup. Much cardboard pickup is thrown away since there is nowhere to put it on the scooters. And we still require our residents to use single-use blue plastic bags. Those bags are torn open, contents dumped on the conveyor, and thrown away at the materials recovery facility. And University Heights pays a 50% premium for service of handling single-use bags. And that's costly, both for the environment and for operations. Those blue bags don't hold cardboard easily either. So we require residents to both flatten cardboard boxes and tie them together with twine to better allow our service employees to handle them. Why? Because all residential recycling is placed in 2 small fixed bins on the front of the rubbish scooter. City employees drive those scooters up the driveways and into the backyards and place those recyclables in those bins. If the cardboard isn't tied, or even if it is tied, if it doesn't fit in those 2 small bins, then it ends up in the hopper on the back of the scooter with the rest of the trash. Once the cardboard is back there, it is trash and it won't be recycled. Currently, we bid our recycling with the East Side Consortium, a group of East Side suburban cities that bid together for rubbish and recycling processing. We all drop off our recyclables to Kimball's MRF in Twinsburg. Consortium cities pay $69 a ton for processing of loose recycling and $96 a ton for bagged recycling. This last contract was the first time the bidding MRFs charged for recycling, as well as the first time they charged a premium rate for handling bagged recycling. The Solid Waste District has advised us that future bids for recycling processing likely will not include a bagged processing option. Without it, our city must be ready and have transitioned to loose recycling, or our program of residential recycling pickup will end for want of a bidder for our bagged recyclables. We are nearing the end of our contract. It expires this year on September 30, 2022. While the contract provides for an option year, that is only on mutual agreement of both the city and our recycling contractor. That said, the East Side Consortium cities are expected to not exercise the option and go back out to bid as the recycling markets have rebounded. For example, Chagrin Falls Village has a market-based recycling rate and is now receiving, not paying, receiving over $16 a ton for recycling, while University Heights pays $96 a ton, a $112 delta. And without throwing away thousands of single-use plastic bags every week, as Chagrin Falls has loose recycling, picked up from residential homes out of carts, like the ones I have proposed for our city. When the East Side Consortium cities go back out to bid, we do not expect an option for bagged recycling. At this rate, if we have not transitioned, and if we lack mutual agreement to exercise the option to extend, we will not be ready. Our residential recycling program will be incompatible and it will end. If it ends, it will end because we failed to transition and keep up with the times. The people want better recycling, not an end to the residential recycling pickup program. The cuts by the Finance Committee may result in the end of the residential recycling pickup program in University Heights, possibly as soon as this October. That is what is at stake in cutting the recycling cards from the 2022 budget. There is still time to fix this. I know we all have the city's interests at heart. I've heard members of this council say they support recycling. We make that support not with our words, but by funding a solution. I'm not going to address in this report all of the cuts, but I will address 2 more. With respect to the proposed cut to eliminate the senior services position, I would note that our city does very little for our seniors by any measure. We do not have a full-time recreation or activities director to fold that responsibility into. I am open to other ideas, of course, and I would ask that the Community Outreach Committee take up this issue and explore alternatives. If one is found that has a budgetary impact, I hope the Finance Committee takes up the issue again this year and makes an adjustment. Finally, I would touch on the proposed elimination of the city planner position from the budget. The city planner is essential for projects here at the city. Projects like the Cedar Road project, the comprehensive zoning code update, grant writing, and more. While the management of the Cedar Road project is now being handled by ODOT, after consulting with members of administrative staff, I am concerned about the viability of proceeding with the zoning code update without a city planner on staff to work with the consultants as we redevelop our city in a thoughtful way. The presence of a planner on staff, as we had in Brendan Zach in 2020, is essential to a successful process. We should all recall that the last time the city attempted a comprehensive rezoning, the process failed. I want to be sure we give ourselves every chance to ensure a successful process this time. In my view, the restoration of the city planner position will help promote that. Coming up later this week, GPD Group will present on the municipal facilities study this Thursday at 6 p.m. at the Committee of the Whole here at Wiley and online via Zoom. All this is being done in order for municipal departments to better serve the community and to make the site of municipal operations a true center of the community year-round. Coming up next week, Sauce the City will have its grand opening at the Cedar Green Plaza this Monday, February 28th at noon. I will be there for the ribbon cutting. Happy to welcome Chef Victor Searcy Jr. and his staff to the city of University Heights. With the Ohio City location now closed, University Heights will be the home of Sauce the City in Greater Cleveland. Thank you. That concludes my report. Next item is item 7, reports and communications from the City Council and the taking of action thereon. Mrs. Weiss?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few points during the committee reports. There'll be further discussion. The Service and Utilities Committee had an excellent first meeting with a speaker discussing recycling and the service director and residents discussing community gardening. Council of the Whole will have, as the mayor just mentioned, the first of many facility meetings this week on Thursday. I want to thank the Finance and Finance Advisory Committee for referring the budget to Council for approval. The Finance Committee unanimously approved the budget to go to City Council for a vote. I want to thank our late Finance Advisory Committee for their input in this process. Although the committee would have liked to approve everything the mayor proposed, the fact is that the operating budget does not generate enough revenue to sustain all of the requests. Because of that, the Finance Committee will be holding strategic planning meetings to begin the process of planning for the future and additional revenue streams over the next few months. The committee kept the commitment to road resurfacing scheduled, as well as a Cedar Road project. We look forward to our new signage. A comprehensive zoning code review will begin shortly. Ongoing facility assessments will give us a path forward to facilities planning. We kept a prudent reserve of 15% of our general fund, as well as additional unrestricted funds for future facility assessment needs. Upgrading our IT infrastructure and hiring an outside IT firm will be new additions to our city. Hiring a human resource company to assist in HR issues will ease the burden of the finance department's workload. And almost 100% of all capital expenditures, including all new vehicle purchases, were approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Weiss. Are there any further reports under this item? If there are none, then we will move to number 8, reading and disposition of ordinances, resolutions, motions, and consideration of agenda items. First item is item A, motion to appoint citizen director to the University Heights City Beautiful Corporation. Is there a motion to go to executive session to discuss this appointment?
Make a motion, Mayor.
Okay, there is a motion to go to executive session to discuss the appointment by Mr. King. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Cooney. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll?
Mrs. Sachs?
I have a question.
Yes.
Missed that? I'm sorry. So when something appears on the agenda that I haven't heard about before, so the option, because it's an employee situation, it would be discussed in executive session?
The technical exception is that it's an appointment of a public official. Appointment by council of a public official. And that is one of several eligible categories with respect to which council can conduct discussions in executive session.
And just to clarify that point, Mr. McConnell, Mayor.
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
And so it's your legal opinion that the appointment of an individual to the city's CIC nonprofit makes that individual a public official?
Yes, it is. Chapter 1724 indicates that the Community Improvement Corporation is a public entity. It must publicly post its meetings. It must invite the public to those meetings. As you may be aware, there are circumstances in which that CIC can conduct negotiations and other activities in executive session that the city cannot, but nevertheless, it's a public entity, so yes.
Okay, thank you. I think I understand more.
And if I could just ask, I guess I'm confused because we make motions to appoint members to the Planning Commission and Board of Zoning Appeals, and I don't remember us ever going into executive session to discuss those candidates.
I don't know if you've gone into executive session
Never,
to
not since I've been on.
discuss
That's
those.
why-
You have gone into executive session, for example, to interview candidates for positions. The law director being one of them.
Right, but it's my understanding that this is ready for a vote and that the interview process is completed, or the selection process is completed. So
I can't speak to that. What I can say is that in the future, if members of council wish to have executive session discussions regarding a city board appointment, that would be permissible.
So now I have a follow-up question. So does this bypass an already existing process? Was this done in another way beforehand? Is that what I'm understanding? And now this is something different?
I can't really speak to that. I don't know the answer to that.
Usually what happens
I don't
is,
know the history.
usually what happens is there's somebody that has expressed interest and we appoint them. We make a motion to appoint them and appoint them.
Well, we had gone to a roll call vote, so.
Can you restate what the motion is?
Sure, the motion is to go to executive session to, for personnel reasons, to discuss the appointment of the citizen director to the University at City Beautiful Corporation. There was a motion and a second.
My turn. Nay. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, so this is a roll call to go to executive session.
Mrs. Sachs?
Nay.
Mrs. Blankfeld?
Nay.
Mr. Rock?
nay.
Mrs. Wise?
Nay.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Nay.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Okay, motion fails.
So Mayor, I would like to make a motion to appoint Wynn Weiser, the citizen director, to the University Heights City Beautiful Corporation.
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion to appoint Lynn Weiser, Citizen Director of the University Heights City Beautiful Corporation by Mrs. Weiss. There's a second by Mrs. Blankfeld. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Do we have to, does this need to be added as an agenda item to the meeting prior to the appointment?
No, I mean, there's a motion, it's on the agenda
It's on the
today, that somebody be appointed.
All right.
I had hoped to have a discussion in executive session. I suppose I'll be having that discussion on the record openly now. Before I proceed, is there any discussion? Well, I've expressed my reservations about reappointing Lynn Weiser to the University Heights City Beautiful Corporation for numerous reasons. First and foremost, the record that Ms. Weiser has had on this body is one that merits looking in another direction for continued citizen representation on the CIC.
Mayor, can I interrupt you for a moment?
Yes.
I'm going to suggest to council that you reconsider your motion here. Notwithstanding anyone's opinion about Ms. Weiser, she has served the public, and I think unless she wants to articulate something to the contrary, having this discussion in public, I'm not sure is worthy of her service. I am troubled by that. Now, she may tell me that I'm barking up the wrong tree and she doesn't mind, but this is a public servant who has served the city, and I have a lot of qualms about airing this kind of dirty laundry unless she's okay with it. That is my view.
Well, I agree, Mr. McConville. I wanted an opportunity to be heard in executive session, and I think it is distasteful.
Mayor?
Yes.
I've spoken with Ms. Weiser regarding the anticipated conversation that could be had on the record, and also about going into executive session. As my colleague, I voted for that because I understood why you would want to do that. But to answer the law director, unless Ms. Weiser would like to correct me, my understanding is that she welcomes the opportunity to hear in public the criticisms being lodged against her and is prepared to respond in kind.
I'm happy to stand corrected. I just felt that needed to be said.
Well, I appreciate that, Mr. McConville, and I do agree that it's distasteful. And I believe I've been put into a position where if I'm to be heard on this, I must say these things publicly, which is disgraceful for the reasons that you've said so. And yet, I do believe that, for the record, these things need to be shared with the council, and if they choose to disregard these observations, then they will do as they will, you will do as you will with regard to this proposed appointment. You know, one of the things that we want in a citizen representative is, to be clear, not a yes person. We want somebody who brings independent judgment. We want somebody who comes at that in good faith and you know, is a valuable contributor then to the CIC. I mean, nobody's going to dispute Lynn Weiser's credentials or that she has an independent voice. However, I am troubled by the fact that when the CIC made the decision to proceed with the townhome project, something which Lynn Weiser supported at the time that it was before the CIC, that in public and after that, she was a vocal critic of that project. She undermined confidence in that project and acted as if she did not have a seat at the table or a voice on this matter or a hand in the decision to proceed with the townhome project. I found that to be duplicitous, and I found that to be dishonest. You know, it is something where you don't have to agree with all the decisions of a particular body, but once you have made a decision, and when you have decided in the affirmative, the idea that you would actively undermine the work of the CIC with your unfair and unfounded criticism is conduct not becoming of being reappointed to this position. Similarly, we had a situation with regard to the Ashurst Rain Garden. Ms. Weiser missed that meeting, and sometimes we all miss meetings. But also, Ms. Weiser could have provided input in advance of the meeting that could have been read at the meeting at any time prior to basically whipping up the street against the CIC and acting as if she wasn't a part of it and didn't have other means to help reverse a decision that in that particular neighborhood was viewed unpopularly. And while the CIC did make the decision ultimately, and we did work out with the builder that we had agreed and signed a contract to transfer that parcel to a parcel which was then and still is a U1 parcel for a single family home, that again, it was an instance where I felt that Ms. Weiser had done a disservice to the organization and had not faithfully discharged those responsibilities by acting sooner and acting with more tact. There are other instances outside and beyond the CIC that I find most troubling. We heard earlier that we're going to resume meetings of the Strategic Planning Committee. The last Strategic Planning Committee was held in July of 2021. At that meeting, the sole item on the agenda was a presentation by Lynn Weiser, where a PowerPoint was exhibited to the public at that meeting, thus making that a public document. Our Economic Development Director, at the conclusion of the meeting, asked for a copy of the presentation. Ms. Weiser declined to give it to her. The next day, the Vice Mayor asked me if I would be willing to meet with her and Ms. Weiser and Chief Pergo to discuss the proposal of outcome-based budgeting per the presentation. And I replied, and when Weiser was on the email chain, that I would like an opportunity to review the presentation again before committing to that meeting, and I asked for a copy of it. I got no response, and I certainly didn't get a copy of the presentation. Ultimately, Mrs. Thomas, our Clerk of Council, in preparation of the minutes for strategic planning, asked Ms. Weiser a few days later for a copy of that, and I think Mrs. Thomas had asked her twice. But in any event, the response was that due to a computer malfunction, the presentation had been lost. So, we were now in a position where a public record had been created, a public document had been created. It had been withheld by the person that created it. It had been withheld after 2 requests, and then on the 3rd request, somehow the document had been destroyed, or lost, or corrupted. And approximately 4 to 6 weeks later, a reconstituted document was provided, which may or may not have been the document. It does not look the same to me based upon my recollection of the meeting, and its reliability is questionable because of the time and circumstances under which the document was created. We spoke earlier about Lynn Weiser's credentials. If there's anybody here who knows better about what one must do to protect a public document, given her profession, given that she teaches students about these responsibilities, I was most disappointed in this conduct. A public record was lost, mishandled, seemingly destroyed, and perhaps not even produced. And that speaks to judgment. For all these reasons, I believe the council and the city would be well served to look elsewhere for this appointment. There are other people in the city who may not be aware of the CIC, its work, or the opening, that could very well be approached, recruited, or advised that there is an opening, told what it's about, and they could then apply for the position. I regret having to go through all this on the record in public. I think it's distasteful. I wish the council would have allowed me the courtesy to express these things in executive session. And it sounds as if Ms. Weiser would like to address the body as well. Certainly, I would not want to deprive her of an opportunity to speak. So if that is the case, Ms. Weiser, you're welcome to come to the podium and address the council and the city.
When Councilman Gould asked me, what do you have to say? Worried about this. I said, no, I think I know what the mayor will say. I also think that it would be an opportunity for me to correct the record and to appropriately state the facts. You started out by saying you want someone who can speak for the residents. I'm going to deal with Ashers first. Your recollection is incorrect. I did not miss the meeting where the Ashers residents appeared before CIC. I was there. What you've left out, Mayor, is that when we started doing infill, I was the director that argued that we were not notifying anyone on either side of those lots, either adjoining or abutting homeowners. Those are the residents whose lives are turned upside down every time we do infill. I argued that we needed to have that. As a matter of fact, I would like to thank Councilman Gould, who is also on CIC, who knows full well I argued for us to change our bylaws to ensure that that was in, because you were very unwilling to notify residents. It is, I think, the residents' representatives' responsibility to make sure those things were done. The reason I pushed for Ashhurst residents to be heard is because I was contacted by one of them who said they were never notified. And we had already gone through those discussions. It was the residents who appeared on that Zoom, and hopefully it is somewhere in Zoom heaven, that articulated their arguments about that infill going in on that lot. I did not make that decision. As a matter of fact, you didn't make the decision to pull the lot. That was council's decision. They are the ones that have the ultimate authority on what we're really doing in CIC. So as far as Ashhurst is concerned, I think that's having the willingness to speak truth to power. At one point when I argued about having those things put into the bylaws, you informed me that your vision was to ensure that every empty lot in University Heights had an infill home on it. It was your vision, and that was what was to be done. Your vision may be, and I'm supportive of that vision, but I think we need to also care for the people that have paid the freight for the city for a long time, that live next door to those homes. On Tullamore, when that home went in, the homeowners got a knock on the door and were told to move their cars out of their driveway and to park on the street. And they ended up parking on the street for almost a month because they were told, we're doing a foundation and your driveway might collapse. That's the kind of issues that those people go through. You all make the decision. You don't live next to that construction. Also, they were told by a contractor, oh, we can do anything we want on your property. The city told us we could. Those kinds of things are problematic. That's one. Now, Taylor, I'm not in any way against the townhouses on Taylor Road. As a matter of fact, I thought they were a good idea. But here's the thing we all need to remember on CIC. We are providing developers with land at a reduced price to be able to induce them to develop. That means the city also has the responsibility, or should have, to get the best possible deal. It seems to me, in the Planning Commission, that Councilman Rock made an excellent argument regarding the fact that there was being totally built for the lot without any visitor parking spaces. Maybe we should throw him off of CIC. How dare he say that? He's an architect. He's got more credentials than I do in that regard. But here's one thing I know because of my background and because I've learned from other cities that have sharper people than maybe we do. We learn and we put that learning into action. If somebody wants to do a deal where we've enhanced their profit to that much, we should be able to get a few visitor parking spaces out of that deal. We've got to stop being afraid that there is only one developer. There are two others. Cleveland Heights doesn't use the one we do. And there's a third floating around. Those are things we haven't even considered in CIC. And those are important. In my discussion back and forth with you, which was on Messenger, which fortunately I've hung on to, Mayor, one of the things that I pointed out, the resident director on CIC comes in with their hands tied behind their back. Because a lot of the pre-discussion that happens for things that move into CIC happen in executive session at council. The resident director is not a part of that. They're just handed plans when things hit on CIC. So I don't think that's inappropriate. Matter of fact, I think that's probably something that's good. The power plant. If you would have taken a couple of minutes and played the tape of the presentation, which I have, Kelly gave me one, you would have seen the PowerPoint presentation that I presented was the PowerPoint presentation I basically gave. I would also note that the City of University Heights did not pay me a penny. I did that on a volunteer basis. You didn't ask for a copy of the PowerPoint, you asked for the PowerPoint. Now granted, unfortunately it did get, I used an old jump drive and that crashed. But fortunately, because I print things out while I'm developing, hello, and I was almost to the end, everything was there. I would also note that the law director of the City of University Heights, and I have his email, and I understand, I heard you disagree with the law director a number of times, but the law director informed me I was in no way, shape, or form in any violation of anything. So I realize that you and I have some issues. And I'll be blunt. You're sitting there because I worked my ass off 5 years ago to get you elected. And you know that, Michael. You know we met at Panera. And I sat down and I talked to you. And I found a person who had some vision, who talked about transparency, who talked about residents' rights, who talked about doing all of those things. And in 2 years in CIC, you were running away from some of that stuff. You don't like it when someone is strong enough to say you might be wrong. But you need that. Everybody needs that. I'm strong enough to stand here and listen to what you said because I was sure that that's probably what you were going to talk about. The other thing with CIC, and it's something I personally feel strong about, community improvement corporations are fantastic. They're critical. They are utterly critical for cities like ours. This council, Vice Mayor Weiss, Councilman Rock, former Councilwoman Susan Pardee, and I'm missing the fifth person. I'm trying to think of who. They supported you the first time that you ran. They supported you because they had been trying to do things like CIC and were unable to get it through under the prior administration. Their ideas you implemented with their support. That's the way it's supposed to work. When it works that way, the city does very, very well. And it needs to go back to doing that. CICs, though, can become highly problematic because they work outside of the public eye. When you came to the CIC and handed us an invoice for the raise and said, of over $1,000, and said, pay this invoice, yes, I spoke out against that. Because you had not presented to CIC the raise for approval. Nothing against you, as you said, it's against ethical and appropriate behavior. And that's where I draw the line. I know you don't like that at times. Nobody does. And, you know, this back and forth, council and mayor about finances, and there's always a budget fight. Mayors come in, this is what we want. Councils are about the power of the purse. They're about saying, this is what we can do. Those are the important things. So when Councilman Gould said, oh, this could get, you know, I don't have any problem standing up here and presenting my side. And I've got the documentation to back it up, a lot of it. And I'm happy to do it, if I have to. As a matter of fact, it gets stuff out of the quiet, she said this and she does that. It allows me to stand up and tell you exactly what to do. That's exactly where I come from. If that is a problem for you, it's a problem for you. I have a lot I can bring to CIC. I'm strange. I know I'm strange because I'm not the average citizen. My reading matter is government finance journals and the American Public Works Association monthly screed on what we need to do with sewers, roads, and water systems. I teach municipal budgeting. Frustratingly, that sometimes lets me say things that you don't like and the council people don't like. You've not heard me But they can tell you there are times when they have said, hey, Wynn, what do you think of? And I've said, you've got to be nuts. So I'm just me. Love it or leave it. But those are the facts. That is factual. Oh, and by the way, Susan Drucker, the Economic Development Director, told you that what I gave you was the presentation, because that's what she told me she told you. I'm not stupid enough not to cover all of my bases and to talk to everybody. If you have an issue with, I think at one point, a public information request not being filled, please remember you had two that I have not filed against. Because you finally, at a council meeting, made a public statement about them, and that's all that had to happen for that to end.
Thank you, Ms. Weiser. Is there any further discussion?
Mayor?
Yes.
Mr. Gould. I'd just like to share a bit of perspective, having served on CIC, to some of the newer members of council about this issue that came up. I'll speak first to the issue of the Ashurst Rain Garden, which actually interacts. I'll start with the Tullamore issue. When the Tullamore issues were coming up, this resident next door to the new construction, the new infill, was reporting some wild accusations from the contractor, and it turns out that that's exactly what this resident was being told. You can't park in your own driveway. Hey, we're coming up and we're going to use this part of your lot now in order to do our construction. And Ms. Weiser had noted that this would be something that could be alleviated if we just had a sit down. This is an issue of just communication. You sit down beforehand, you go over what's going to happen, you bring everyone to the table, the residents would know what was happening, and we've implemented these in-person meetings now where the community comes together, everyone's notified, the mayor goes out with a development director and sits down and has these meetings. Prior to the Ashurst Rain Garden, Vice Mayor, I believe it was you, had asked whether or not there was notification made to these residents, the residents around the Ashurst Rain Garden. And the answer from the administration was yes, there had been. Based on that representation and our understanding that the residents had been notified, we voted to proceed with the infill with Kness. We later found out through Robin Gilbert that she had been sitting, or a neighbor had been sitting in their home and just saw someone measuring at the rain garden and asked what was going on and found out everything that had happened. It was not Wynn Weiser. I mean, I don't know if you, on your walks, if you met Ms. Gilbert or Terry Gilbert, her husband, a very well-respected attorney. These are not people that, as the mayor has characterized, need Wynn Weiser to, embolden them to come in or cause them to turn against the city. Ms. Gilbert said in her statements to the media that she was furious with the administration for what they've done. In the minutes that are posted from the CIC's June 2020 meeting, there is a notation, first of all, so June 11th, 2020, first of all, Ms. Weiser is correct, she was in attendance at that meeting. And Ms. Gilbert says that she's really unhappy with the notification process with the pocket park being built. That they were able to come in and talk to the city when the pocket park was built, but now when this rain garden is being destroyed, that's not what's happening. And there was a greater discussion. Ms. Drucker, our development director, acknowledged on the record, according to the minutes, Ms. Drucker stated that the lack of notification was due to an oversight of the board and the lack of a secretary at the time of the original decision by the board. So when you are considering what Ms. Weiser has said, which is that there was an issue with notification, that you should notify your residents, that is supported by the record and the acknowledgement by the administration that there was a fault in making that notification. As further evidence of that, Mr. McConville drafted an amendment to our bylaws as a result of Ms. Weiser's work around this to say that in future, when the CIC gives over a piece of property to residents in an area, that they will be notified. Now, as you can imagine, I'm a representative on CIC, by the way. I think we need to add me as an addition now because we need to make reappointments of 2 council members. But, you know, as a representative on CIC, I would get to sit there. The vice mayor gets to sit there. Sue Pardee was able to be in those meetings. But you, Mr. Cootie, are not. You, Mr. King, are not. You, Ms. Sachs, are not. And so it was very embarrassing for those members. The way that this works is that the council votes to take a piece of property that the city owns and gives it to CIC. CIC then, as an independent quasi-governmental nonprofit, makes a decision on what to do with the property. So we're able to give it to Canez at lower costs without going through the bidding process that the city would have to go through to get rid of our property. It was extremely embarrassing to members of council who were not on CIC. I'm thinking of Mr. Ertl, who has residents coming to him furious that this piece of property was given over without any notification to them. So we also changed the laws of our city to require notification before council can turn over a piece of property to CIC. So again, supporting Ms. Weiser's statements regarding notification and the lack of notification to residents in these instances resulted not only in a change to the bylaws of the CIC, but also to a change of the ordinances of the city of University Heights. And then finally, I remember there being a group message regarding the public records request that the mayor made. I don't know if that was the second request that he was referring to with Ms. Thomas, but there was an email that went out regarding a public records request that the mayor had made regarding this PowerPoint presentation. I met with the law director, I met with the vice mayor, we had conversations regarding this PowerPoint presentation, whether or not a volunteer who was presenting to a committee body would even be required or viewed as a body member, because we are the body. Would this person be considered that? And I recall specifically when Ms. Weiser had made the offer, I'm sorry, I can't get this PowerPoint presentation. I will recreate it for you. I will send you this recreation. Even today from you, Mr. Mayor, I have not heard substantively how this PowerPoint presentation is different. I've heard that it is different. I've heard that it's not the same, but I haven't heard to what end. And if you are looking to review an item because you need to refresh your recollection about it, it's difficult for me to understand how you also have enough knowledge about this to say how it is different, but haven't publicized that. And the law directors commended Ms. Weiser for her willingness to recreate this document and provide it. So I don't believe that it's a matter of judgment for her. I have listened to when Weiser passionately argue for the citizens of this city, as is her role. When she was critical of CIC, she was not just critical of the mayor, she was not critical of just the administration, she was critical of me. She was critical of the vice mayor. She was critical of Ms. Pardee. It was a fairly and accurately placed criticism that resulted in the changes that I've outlined. And for those reasons, she has my support in continuing her role on CIC.
Thank you, Mr. Gould. Are there any further comments?
I just would like to make a comment also in support of Ms. Weiser.
Go ahead.
Thank you. The amount of historical knowledge that Ms. Weiser has, especially with a council at this point, that really Mr. Rock and myself are the elder statesmen of 6 years, is we're so fortunate to have that means to go to, not just in CIC, but in general as a city, because she has been a servant leader and just a consummate professional in terms of how she handles tough situations. She is critical when she needs to be, but she's your biggest advocate when she needs to be as well. And her knowledge, it cannot be surpassed by anyone in anyone that I have met in terms of government knowledge in the city. She is an asset to the CIC, and I fully support having her continue in that position.
Thank you, Mrs. Weiss. Mrs. Blankfeld.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to echo Mr. Gould's very eloquent and complete remarks, as well as Mrs. Weiss's. Ms. Weiser has, as Mrs. Weiss states, an exceptional historical knowledge, which is so very important, because you think you're doing something right, your intentions are well, but Ms. Weiser is able to provide you with the reasoning, the sound reasoning, as to why it may not be the best course of action, or suggest, she is not one to say, well, we tried that and it didn't work. She is one to say that we tried this and it did not work, this is why, and is willing to offer sound suggestions for how to move forward that will benefit the residents. In my time speaking with residents, her name has come up so many times all over the city, in that she is a passionate advocate and her reasoning is sound. And while, you may disagree with her at times, any of us, her motivations are only in the best interest of the city. And she is a consummate professional with a resume that puts us all to shame when it comes to someone that has the knowledge to be in the position that she should be. I am firmly in her corner, and I think she should continue for the benefit of our residents.
Thank you, Mrs. Blankfeld. Are there any further comments?
Mayor?
Yes.
I just ask, it was Ms. Weiss who made the motion, just to clarify the record, for your motion, I believe according to the bylaws, Mr. McCon will correct me if I'm inaccurate, but subsequent appointments are for 3 years for members.
I believe that's correct.
So Ms. Weiser, or Ms. Excuse me, Ms. Weiser. Would you be willing, Ms. Weiss, would you be willing to amend your motion just to make clear that the motion to appoint citizen director to the university, or motion to appoint Lynn Weiser as citizen director to the University Heights City Beautiful Corporation for a period of 3 years?
Yes, I would amend that.
Okay, so noted that the motion's been amended to reflect a 3-year appointment. Mrs. Thomas, who seconded the motion?
Mrs. Blankfeld.
Mrs. Blankfeld, I assume you agree.
Yes,
Continue
thank
to
you,
second.
Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Blankfeld. Is there any further discussion on the now amended motion?
My only comment is and this is nothing negative against Ms. Weiser, regarding her experience with the resume. When I shared with council earlier, we engaged the residents in University Heights to ensure that there was awareness for the opening of the position, so that we could review potential applicants for that. My concern is the request to put that out as probably not as robust as maybe it could have been. There was public information that had been, and Mr. Gold had even commented that had been shared in the post on social media, and which is correct. Even though that was about 3 months ago. I think collectively, to look at the process, we're seeking input from residents for potential positions. We reflect as to we engaging the way that we should in order to get the best possible candidates. And I do understand there's support, Ms. Weiser, for this particular position. We should look at this for anytime we see activity, potential residents and citizens. If we're making sure we do get the best candidates to help the city move forward.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cooney.
Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Gould.
I really hope Mr. Cooney's point isn't lost to this body. I think it's, as I wrote in our emails, I think it's absolutely appropriate to be brought to public, community outreach, Mr. King's committee, and I hope that will be added to the agenda. While we did put this in our e-newsletter, while we did do an online blast, while the mayor did mention it in a public meeting, there may be other things that we can do to make, to use the term, more robust ask, because I think that civic engagement and citizen participation is something that we all want.
I agree.
I agree as
Thank you,
well.
Mr. Gould. Are there any further comments? If there are none, then Mrs. Thomas, will you please call the vote?
Mrs. Sachs?
Aye.
Mrs. Blankfeld?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you all. Mr. Cooney, when I was campaigning at John Carroll, I had a wonderful discussion with a woman encouraging her to apply for the residence position. She didn't. She never followed through on it. And I have talked to individuals about CIC who I believe are qualified, and I do encourage them also to apply. This is not about me. Unfortunately, I think it was made to be about me. My personal belief, this isn't about me, this is about the city. This is about all of our different groups operating in an ethical and collaborative manner. And you're right, we have a tremendous amount of talent in University Heights. I enjoyed listening to the sustainability committee stuff that's going on. That kind of stuff is what makes this city this city. And we need to knit it back together. So thank you for bringing it up.
Yes, one of my close friends is one of your former students. He speaks highly of you. So.
Oh, Lord.
I won't say who it is or
They haunt me. They haunt me. They all haunt me. They show up everywhere.
But thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, I just had a quick question before we go on to the next
Go ahead, Mrs. Weiss.
item. It's for the law director. So we need to appoint 2 council members, I believe, as well. Only 2, I sent out an email if anybody is interested, and 2 people did say that. Can I add that to the agenda? Because I think they're up also.
Yes, you can add that to the agenda.
Okay, so is that a motion to add to the agenda? Is the next item appointment of 2 council members to the University Heights City Beautiful Corporation?
Yes, I'd like to make that motion.
We have a motion by Mrs. Weiss to amend the agenda to move to appoint 2 city council members to the University Heights City Beautiful Corporation, seconded by Mr. Rock. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Mrs. Thomas, we call the roll.
Mrs. Sachs?
Aye.
Mrs. Blankfeld?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Okay, very good. The motion carries, and the agenda is now amended, and we will move on to that agenda item, which is a motion to appoint 2 city council members to the University Heights City Beautiful Corporation. Is there a motion?
Can I make a suggestion that it's great if there's only 2, but
Separate?
well, the vote should be separate, but the way this should work is there should be nominations and seconds until there are no nominations anymore. And so if there are only 2, then you can take 2 roll call votes. But if, for example, there are 3 nominations and seconds, then we would conduct our voting a little differently, where you would vote for the candidates and not be voting yea or nay. So I just want to make sure we go through it that way so that if anyone is compelled to nominate a 3rd candidate, they're given the opportunity to do so.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McConville. Well, then I'll open the floor to nominations. Are there any nominations for council member directors to the University Heights City Beautiful Corporation?
Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Gould.
I would nominate Councilperson Sherry Sachs as a council representative to the University Heights City Beautiful Corporation for a term of 3 years.
Very good. We have a nomination of Council Member Sherry Sachs for a 3-year term. Is there a second to that nomination? We have a second by Mrs. Blankfeld. Ms. Sachs, do you accept the nomination?
I do. Thank you very much for the opportunity and for explaining to me beforehand what was involved and for all the discussion to clarify a lot further. Even though it was a little painful, it was very helpful to me. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mrs. Sachs. Are there any further nominations to Council Member Director to the University Heights City Beautiful Corporation?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to nominate Councilman Justin Gould for a 3-year term as well. 2 years because, can it be 3 years if somebody's up for election in 2 years?
I think it can be 3 and then there would just be an expiration.
Yeah, there would be.
The intent of the bylaws was to have a staggering terms for council members. So the initial was for 2 and for 3, and
That's
then
correct.
should repeat.
Yeah.
So in order to maintain that staggering, since Ms. Sachs has a full 4-year term ahead of her, I've nominated her for 3 years, and because only 2 years approximately remain in my term, I would suggest that the nomination would be appropriate for a 2-year term for me. Therefore, we would maintain the staggering, and in January of 2024, we would appoint for a 3-year term at that point, whoever we would want.
It seems to be an over. Okay.
For a 2-year term.
Okay, so we have a nomination of Council Member Gould, Justin Gould, for a 2-year term at this time. I don't recall, did I ask for a second to the nomination?
No, not yet.
Is there a second to the nomination?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. King. Mr. Gould, do you accept the nomination?
I accept that.
Very good, thank you. Are there any other nominations? Is there a motion to close nominations?
So
Very good. I don't know if it's really necessary, but it seems to be customary. So, motion by Mr. Gould to close nominations. Is there a second? I don't know if that's really required. If there are no further nominations, if you don't mind, I'll just move on. There are only 2 nominations, Mr. McConville, so
I would do 2 separate roll calls. I'm sorry to be a stickler, but.
no, that's fine. Thank you for clarification. Then we will do the first roll call on the 3-year term for Councilmember Sherry Sachs. Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll?
Mrs. Sachs?
I think I need to recuse myself. No? I said yes? Okay, aye.
I think you can vote for yourself, Mrs. Sachs.
Okay, thank you. Like I did the election. Thank you. Aye.
Mrs. Blankfeld?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Okay, very good. Congratulations, Councilmember Sachs. Next, then, is a roll call vote on Councilmember Justin Gould for the 2-year term.
Mrs. Sachs?
Aye.
Mrs. Blankfeld?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Abstain?
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
I think he's just telling you. Mrs. Sachs.
I used the wrong word.
That's okay. Motion carries, and congratulations, Mr. Gould. Congratulations to all 3 appointees this evening.
You tell us about council longer.
What is that?
You tell us about council longer.
All right, then. Now we will move to item B, Ordinance 2022-09, authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with the State of Ohio Department of Transportation for the resurfacing of Cedar Road between South Taylor Road and Fenwick Road and between Miramar Boulevard and South Green Road, and authorization of payment of the city's share of costs and expenses thereunder, and declaring an emergency. This is on second reading. I don't think anything has changed substantively on this matter as it appears before us. It is listed as being introduced by myself. The project has not changed in any meaningful way. The funding sources have not changed as of this time. except to say that we've had the benefit of a finance committee meeting where the recommended budget does include money for this, and as well as a subsequent finance committee meeting redirecting some ARPA money towards this program, or towards this project. So, does anybody have anything they'd like to add about that, Mr. Rowe?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Last time we were here for general session, I had asked that we table this discussion because we did not have a budget ready, and there was still uncertainty about the additional ARPA money. Now that we've discussed that in committee at the last finance meeting, which was about 2 hours ago, I feel comfortable that we can move forward with this agenda item, and I do support it.
Very good, thank you, Mr. Rock. Is there any further discussion? Is there a motion to adopt ordinance 2022-09 on emergency?
So moved, Mayor, on emergency.
Very good, we have a motion by Mr. Rock. Is there a second?
I'll second. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, we'll take a second then by Mr. Gould, thank you. Is there any further discussion on the motion? I think I know the answer to this, but I'll ask Mr. McConville anyway. We don't have to vote to suspend the rules, we only need one vote on this one.
Correct.
All right, I can say that was for the benefit of our new council members, but as the chair, I wanted to make sure I was doing it right too, so. Very good, we will have one vote, as there is no need to vote for a suspension of the rules. It does take 5 votes though to pass because it is on emergency, so. Mrs. Thomas, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Sachs?
Aye.
Mrs. Blankfeld?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye. Okay, very good, motion carries. The fireworks ordinance was referred to committee.
As well? Okay.
Yeah, items
Thank you.
D, G, and H were all referred to the safety committee, so.
Mayor, for the reason, or Mayor?
Yes. Mr. Gould.
For the reasons stated in the resolution, I would make a motion to pass resolution 2022-14 as written and announced by you.
So we are needing to have this go through 2 readings. And the reason is because when you take a property by eminent domain for purposes of blight, you cannot pass that resolution of necessity on emergency. It's a quirk of the statute, so we will need to entertain this at another meeting.
Motion withdrawn.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Gould. Yes, just for clarification on the record, there was a prior resolution of necessity with regard to the core retail parcel that went up on 2 readings and was passed. This resolution of necessity deals now with the quote-unquote parking garage parcel. Mr. McConville, is there anything that you wanted to say for the record with regard to this item? I think it speaks for itself. It may not be more
It's
than much more
essentially a
than you say.
companion resolution to the prior resolution of necessity that we passed relating to University Square parcel. This resolution relating to the garage parcel particularly.
Okay, very good.
Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Gould.
For the record, I will renew my comments made regarding the specific types of blight found at this, at the retail parcel and in this parking garage. I believe that the blight created by one interacts with the blight created by the other, and for the reasons I stated on the record regarding the core retail parcel, I also support this resolution.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Gould. I think we all recall your comments, and I believe they are on point as well. Thank you. Yes, Mr. King.
One comment. Probably the most mentioned item I had while campaigning was about the parking structure at University Square. It's indeed a blight, and I'm in favor of this.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. King. And yes, it is an ongoing concern here among us at the city, and certainly out in the community. It is something that I think we've all heard about extensively and made our own observations with regard to certainly its appearance. If there is nothing further at this time, then we will consider this first reading to be had, and I would anticipate seeing this on second reading at the next regular council meeting. Moving then to item F, Ordinance 2022-15, authorizing permanent appropriations for current and other expenditures of the City of University Heights, Ohio for the period of time commencing January 1, 2022 and ending December 31st, 2022. This is on first reading. Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you, Mayor. This attachment to the proposed ordinance represents all the changes that were recommended by the Finance Committee to Council. So those have all been put in. We had a little glitch with the software last week that got repaired over the weekend, so those numbers are accurate, and await the final decision after the second reading.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Are there any comments with regard to, or discussion with regard to this item? If there are none, then we will consider.
Mayor?
Yes, Mr. King.
Thank you. This was my first time going through the budget process, and I had some concerns I'd like to express. I expected the decision-making process would occur during the actual joint finance advisory public meetings. Cuts to the budget appear to already have been made prior to the start of the last meeting. And members of the advisory committee expressed that they were not consulted on the decisions. I'm also disappointed the opportunity to reform our recycling program was not given more consideration. Our current method of collection is not delivering satisfactory results, and proposed changes would have aligned us more closely with the best practices followed by other communities. We need to reform our programs, or we may soon find ourselves in a situation where our blue bag recyclables will not be accepted. We are now having a series of Service and Utilities Committee meetings to evaluate our recycling program. I hope that these meetings take a deep dive and consider all options. The Vice Mayor has mentioned that the budget could be amended in the future, so I'm hopeful we can revisit a more effective method of collection still this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. King. Are there any further comments or discussion at this time? If there are none, then we will consider the first reading on the budget to be had. And I would anticipate seeing it at the next regular meeting of this council. Next then is item I, a motion to enter executive session for the purpose of discussing legal proceedings, personnel, and real estate matters. Mr. McConville, is there anything that's arisen since we last spoke that would require an executive session at this time?
No, Mayor.
Okay, very good. The administration has nothing to offer with regard to an executive session at this time. So if there is nothing else and no motion, we will then move on to reports and communications from the directors of the various departments. And we will start with finance. Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you. Two small things. The auditors were on site today to work on the financial audit. That will take about 2 months. We've given them plenty of materials in the background prior to this. They need to come out to do certain verification and compliance requirements. So we'll look to work with them continually through the end of April. And relevant to all the discussions about the CIC, we have insurance invoices. The insurance is up in March. And we also need to approve the engagement letter for the audit of the CIC. That's important because it's a component unit of the city, and we can't complete the city audit until that audit is done. Those financial statements also need to be filed with the state by the end of April. So, very good. Sooner the better for a CIC.
Thank you.
That's it for me.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Any questions for Mr. Kennedy? Seeing none, we will move on to Director of Law, Mr. McConville.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to let council know that I interacted with the Board of Elections. Members there provided me with what amounts to a proof of what the voters will see on the ballot. It reflects the ordinance that you passed, calling for an amendment to the charter relating to the Civil Service Commission 1 and 3 rule. And along those lines, I've been asked to render an opinion on legal issues in connection with the public expenditure of funds relating to that proposed charter amendment, and I should have that opinion out to you all this week. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. McConville. Public safety, police.
No report this time.
Thank you, Chief. Public safety, fire.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. I just wanted to thank you for your support for the regional firefighter examination process, the Civil Service Commission efforts as well. The marketing department for that effort is underway, and you should start seeing some promotional advertisements on social media and our website for that examination. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief Perkins. Service, Mr. Picorni is on vacation this week and he has no report. Next is building, and Mr. White is excused from this meeting. We now go to housing and community development. Mr. Engelbrecht.
Good evening. Within the last 2 weeks, the department has done 18 rental inspections, 31 point of sale inspections, so that's starting to pick up back up again.
Mr. Engelbrecht, could you turn the mic up towards you?
Is that better?
That's a little better, yeah.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, starting over, we've done 18 rental inspections within the last 2 weeks, 31 point of sale inspections within the last 2 weeks. We average roughly 120 calls a week. The department will be putting together an RFP for grass cutting and bushes very soon, since spring is right around the corner. Tomorrow, the department will be testifying on 2 cases that are in front of Shaker Court. The first is about the property at 13485 Cedar. That's the parking lot close to the corner of Cedar and Taylor. The second is for rental property over at 13606 Cedar. The parking lot is actually a pretrial, so we probably won't be testifying about that one, but we will be on the stand for the property at 13606 Cedar. Lastly, the department has been meeting with other communities, namely South Euclid, Cleveland Heights, Shaker Heights now, and the city of Euclid regarding planning for bike lanes, along with other sustainability efforts and the way to pay for them, potentially through a grant from the WACA. Mr. King has been present during these meetings. Planning is continuing, again, dealing with placemaking elements along with bike paths to better connect our city. That's nothing further. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Engelbrecht. Any questions for Mr. Engelbrecht? If there are none, then we will move on to City Engineer, Mr. Chuney.
No report this evening, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chuney. Communications and civic engagement, Mr. Cook.
Good evening, everyone. To one item, the new issue of Mosaic will be hitting mailboxes this week. Feel free to shoot me a text or an email when your mail carrier or delivers it. We're going to have an article on the new Sachs City, our new assistant clerk council, and the addition of our current facilities and the needs for new ones. So let me know what you think of the issue, and planning has already begun before the next issue comes out midday.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Cook. Any questions for Mr. Cook? Seeing none, we will move on then to economic development. Mrs. Drucker is on vacation this week, and she has no report. We now move on to reports of standing committees. Building and housing, Mrs. Blankfeld.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We are waiting on Mr. Engelbrecht and McConville's, the result of their meetings regarding the point of sale. And once they've had those conversations and have something to bring to the committee, we will meet again. Mrs. Thomas has established for us that we will intend to meet just prior to the second council meeting of each month, should we have items to discuss. That's it.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mrs. Blankfeld. Community outreach, Mr. King.
Thank you, Mayor. There is currently a doodle poll circulating to schedule the Tech Advisory Committee meeting. So hopefully we will have that on the books very shortly. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. King. Economic Development, Mr. Rock.
Yes, Mayor. I don't have anything new to report, but just want to reiterate that this committee will be looking at the new zoning code updates once the company is contracted to work with the city. So just keep that in mind. It will be a very busy year. It's included in this year's budget. I suspect that'll pass. There has been no comment on removing that, so I suspect that those meetings will happen this year.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Rock. Finance, Mrs. Weiss.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. No report.
Thank you. Recreation, Mr. Cooney.
No report, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cooney. Safety, Mr. Gould.
Thank you, Mayor. The items referred to committee this evening will appear on our March 7th agenda.
Okay, very good. That would be preceding the next city council meeting, correct?
Always said at 6 p.m. just before, yep.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Gould. Service and Utilities, Mrs. Sachs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first Service and Utilities Committee meeting of 2022 was held both in person and virtually on Zoom on Wednesday, February 16th. Bear with me for a moment. I'm going to give some context with regard to how we're going to do at least the first set of meetings. A priority goal of the committee is to address the recommendations of the May 2020 Solid Waste Study in the order in which they appear, because it will support the most appropriate outcome. The purpose of the study was to analyze the current method of rubbish collection in an effort to identify University Heights residents' preference to achieve a more cost-effective method and improved sustainable outcome for rubbish collection. The first recommendation is education, awareness, and program promotion, specifically pertaining to the various forms of rubbish, including solid waste and the variety of available, local, sustainable alternatives and options. It has been made known in public meetings in the almost 2 years since that solid waste study was presented that there is much contaminated and unusable recycled trash. However, there has been very little, if any, public discussion about how to improve recycling habits. Therefore, over the course of the next few committee meetings, presenters will be invited to provide valuable information to educate and increase University Heights residents as well as council's awareness to make the proper decisions of sustainability options. Because whether we ultimately change to use blue plastic bins or continue to use the blue plastic bags in the meantime, it is most critical to know what is and is not recyclable in Cuyahoga County. So to that point, Karen Miller, education specialist at the Cuyahoga County Solid Waste District, was our first presenter about recycling right. Together we can learn how to evolve from being a wishful recycler who wishes that everything is recyclable, that's how I was before her talk, to becoming informed recyclers to actually avoid contaminating and inadvertently nullifying recyclables. I strongly encourage all residents of University Heights to visit the website www.cuyahogarecycles.org for the most current information to become familiar with recycling correctly.
Okay.
I'm not finished.
Oh, okay. All right. Let's continue.
And I've already reached out a little bit to administration to somehow incorporate the lessons learned and the resources available from these sessions so that University Heights residents can quickly go to use them as reliable and quick reference tools. The meeting also included an interesting discussion about gardening in public spaces in University Heights. Both topics are planned to be discussed at the next Service and Utilities meeting, which will be on Tuesday, March 15th at 6 p.m. in person and virtually on Zoom. A representative from Rust Belt Writers is scheduled to do a presentation to increase our awareness about the do's and the don'ts of composting and its benefits to the environment. While these next few committee meetings will involve discussions and presentations to fulfill the education and awareness recommendation, this is a heads up that the second recommendation is customer service, specifically pertaining to the solid waste survey. In the interest of time and the effort to work together to move this long overdue process forward, I'm respectfully asking administration to work together with the City Council and residents of University Heights to mail the valid, reliable, and legislated customer service survey. By hearing from as many resident voices as possible, we may finally move forward through all the 7 of the solid waste study recommendations. Finally, I would be remiss if I did not publicly thank Callie Thomas for her patience, guidance, and support, assisting me with putting these meetings together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Sachs. Committee of the Whole, Mrs. Weiss.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. There will be a Committee of the Whole meeting this Thursday to discuss the first of many facilities assessments review, and there is also a council retreat on March 10th. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Weiss. We now move to item 11, reports of special committees and the taking of action thereon. Are there any reports? Seeing none. Item 12, unfinished and miscellaneous business. Is there any unfinished or miscellaneous business? Seeing none, we move to item 13. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Also move, Mayor.
Okay, a motion to adjourn by Mrs. Blankfeld. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. King. Mrs. Thomas, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Sachs?
Aye.
Mrs. Blanchfield?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mrs. White?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mrs. Cooney?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Very good. Our next meeting is, next regular meeting is March 7th, 2022, here at Wiley. We are now adjourned. Thank you.